Jordy, I know you got your show coming up in about 30 minutes, so I appreciate you making some time for us this morning. I want to start with these two football transfers coming over from Arkansas to Baton Rouge, Greg Brooks and Joe Foucha. How much of an impact do you think they can have on the Tigers' defense this next season?
Well, they're going to have an immediate impact, guys, because LSU's roster right now is as depleted as a college football roster can be. I mean, when you look at the numbers for LSU right now, the bowl numbers that they played with in the bowl in Texas and to where they are now heading into a spring semester and spring session is very alarming. So, I mean, they're really just looking for bodies and players, and both those guys, Greg Brooks and Joe Foucha, is going to have to step in and play immediately because, they've seen a massive turnover on the roster, whether it be transfer portal or heading to the NFL or, players just opting out that has seen that roster really go down in numbers, and the defensive backfield's been hit harder than any position group that they have on the team.
And you think about Derek Stingley Jr. moving on to the NFL, Eli Ricks transferring to Alabama. You'd know it better than I do, and I'd say that kind of added to that room. And I wonder from your perspective, Jordy, you talk LSU up and down all day long, 365 days a year. I know this rivalry means more to Arkansas fans as it does LSU, but do you think it adds to it on both sides? I know they're both Louisiana kids coming back home, but do you think this heightens it up a little bit? And Landon Jackson also coming over from LSU to Arkansas. How much does that increase it when these guys have kind of transferred schools?
Well, I think internally, it makes it mean a little bit more because of the familiarity that both of them have with each of the programs. But guys, I got to tell you, man, I mean, the storyline of this rivalry meaning more to Arkansas was something that played for a while. But over the last, I'd say, 8 to 10 years, almost the last decade, Arkansas has really gotten LSU's attention and gets as much respect as anybody on the schedule. They know if you overlook Arkansas, they'll beat you, and Arkansas, they know that that's something that they want to do. So, I really think that Arkansas gets LSU's attention these days, but I definitely do believe that when you switch players within locker rooms, you got a guy like Landon Jackson who came over for a year, and now he's heading up to Fayetteville, and that just means that he'll be talking a little bit of LSU throughout the off season, especially during game week. So more people will be bought in. So I definitely, and the same with Foucha and Brooks coming down here. I mean, they'll be rallying the guys to kind of get behind them and support them that week when taking on their ex-team. So it's definitely going to mean a little bit more and squeeze a little bit more juice that week.
Jordy, you mentioned the phrase buy-in or people bought in. How's that with Brian Kelly? What's the feel like there with the fans? I know it's hard probably to gauge the program itself with the roster in flux, but the calls you take, the interactions you have, what's the feel for the new head coach at LSU?
There's still a lot of curiosity in the public. I mean, you really heard from him very minimally. He was introduced at a basketball game. He did one press conference here when he was introduced. We saw him on the bowl game being interviewed by the broadcast booth, and I mean, for the most part, that's really been the only time that people have heard from Brian Kelly, the fan base, and we even had some players over here the other night at our new studio watching the national championship game. We had Jack Besh and Jaquelin Roy, who's a big defensive tackle, and Major Burns, who was a Georgia transfer to the defensive backfield, and even those guys were like, we hadn't talked to him, we hadn't seen him too much. I mean, I still think that he's overhauling this roster. He's bringing in his coaches. He's still filling out his staff. There's still one position left to fill with a wide receiver. I believe that'll be Hankton from Georgia. I expect him to take that job probably today. So, I still think that they have stuff going on. So for the most part, I mean, it's a little curiosity on who Brian Kelly is and just what his plan is going to be, because there's been little explanation to the public. Not that he owes them one, but coming from where LSU has been, where Ed Ogeron, he ran to every single microphone that was on, and Les Miles was always looking for a camera to wink into. Brian Kelly has been for the most part, pretty low key.
Yeah, I was thinking about expectations. It's probably way too early to kind of figure out where either team's going to be, Arkansas or LSU. But boy, you look at some here early on thought with Brooks and Foucha leaving the program and now landing at LSU officially that may shift some things, at least in that series. But I think when you look at these two programs, you can easily make the case that the expectations for win total probably and should be higher at Arkansas next year than LSU. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I do. I believe when you dive into LSU and you really kind of roll your sleeves up and start doing your homework on them, I mean, you're like, whoa. I mean, this is they're in a serious overhaul. They haven't had this type of reconstruction or overhaul to their roster or program since Nick Saban came in here in 1999. I mean, this is as much of a turnover that this program has ever seen in the last 20 years. And, when you look at that, there are repercussions from that, especially when your competition is getting better. Texas A&M got better on signing day. Alabama got better on signing day. You guys got better on signing day. Ole Miss got better on signing day. LSU was able to salvage a class, but they didn't get better. I mean, they were able to bring some guys in, but they lost for the most part some really key ingredients to the class of 22 in the state of Louisiana to teams like Texas A&M and Alabama. I mean, Texas A&M came into Baton Rouge and took Le'Veon Moss, a running back from right here in the capital city. I mean, Alabama took the top 3 wide receivers out of the state this year. That's going to set you back, and that's going to continue to make your competition better. And I think that's the dirty formula of the SEC, specifically the SEC West. I mean, it's when you commit to it, and LSU's thrown a lot of money at overhauling and reconstructing. It makes sense, but I mean, not only do you have to keep up, you got to sustain yourself. You got to get there first, and LSU is playing from as far back in the pack as they have played, like I said, in the last 20 years.
Talking with Jordy Culotta, host of the Jordy Culotta Show this morning. His show starts in about 20 minutes. We only got a few more minutes with him. I want to switch up the conversation, Jordy, talk basketball. I thought that LSU was going to be a solid team in the SEC. I did not expect them to get off to the jump that they had. Big win against Florida the other night. Big game against Arkansas on Saturday. With all that the Tigers lost last year, what's been the key with Will Wade's success with this team this year?
Well, really, I mean, the way that he hit the transfer portal, I mean, he struck gold with Xavier Pinson and Tari Eason. Pinson from Missouri, who's a veteran guy. He'd lost him in the Tennessee game, and he sat out the Florida game. They expect him to play against Arkansas on Saturday, but he has been a stabilizing force for LSU, who turned over that point guard position with Javonte Smart, who was very much a leader within the program. And Pinson's kind of slid into that role and really stabilized that spot. And then when you look at Tari Eason, I think, outside of Walker Kessler down at Auburn, who transferred in from North Carolina, I think Eason's probably been the best transfer in the country, or in the conference at least. I mean, he has affected this LSU team in so many ways. I mean, he fouled out in only 7 minutes of action the other night. If you were watching the game, you guys probably weren't. But, I mean, people down here were more fired up about him. I mean, he's leading the huddle. He's tightening up their huddles when he's fouled out on the bench. And, we had Will Wade on yesterday morning after the win, and he said, look, man, Eason asked if he could speak to the huddle with 6 minutes left in the game as he fouled out. And he kind of gave a little colorful description of what he was telling the team. And, I mean, he's also their best player. He's also their top defender. So to be able to get into the transfer portal and turn some guys over that you lost last season and replace them with guys like Eason and Pinson and, even rookies like Efton Reed and Brandon Murray have made really big impacts. And, fellas, this is the best defense that Wade has had since he's been here in the last 5 years. I mean, this is a big-time college basketball defense. They defend you for 94 feet. They are very disciplined. They've got rim protectors. They rebound the ball. They play this switching style man around the perimeter that's very tough to execute, but they're very athletic, and they communicate well. They just do a lot of good things on the defensive end, and that is is more than anything why they're 15-1. I mean, Will Wade's teams, you figure they roll out of bed and they'll score 85, and that's just not been the case this year. I mean, offensively, they've tried to find it, and they're starting to get it right. But, I mean, make no mistake about it.
Jordy, we lose you?
I think he gone.
Lost him for a sec. So, and that was one of the things, Jordy, kind of to cap him off. We might have to get him back just to close him out. But what Jordy was saying about the defense and LSU, this is the best defensive team. And I've heard that from several different SEC network basketball analysts saying the exact same thing that Jordy kind of concluded his thoughts with. And I think that's what's going to make this team difficult to play against tomorrow in Pete Maravich Center. Tommy, it's just that they're going to be hard to score against.
And Eric Musselman coached there a brief stint as an assistant. He knows exactly what the mood's going to be like and what the pressure is to win there.
Yeah. Hey, Jordy, before we let you go, man, we really appreciate you making some time for us. Do you do your show out of your house? Do you have a Dan Patrick type of setup? It looked like a home, and I'm seeing all this memorabilia on your walls and everything. I know that's something Tommy and I have talked about, building in-home studios at our place. Is your setup at your house, man? So
we just left my house last week and moved into our first studio. For the last year, we have been doing it out of. I have a back house in my, on my property that we kind of converted into a studio, and just this week we have just wrapped up here on this Friday. This will be our second week of live broadcast out of the new studio here, which has been very exciting. But yes, we have been functioning for the last year out of my house, and we have kind of rented what is a content creating house near downtown Baton Rouge, where we can bring. This morning we'll bring in a House of Representative to talk gambling, which has been legalized in our state, and they'll talk about the mobile capability. We'll have somebody coming in who's really affecting NIL. So we're able to kind of bring people in. It was a little embarrassing to bring people to my house. You know what I mean? Like it was tough to ask people to show up to your house at like 7 o'clock in the morning. But now we've become a little bit more legitimate with the studio. But yes, to answer your question, we were functioning out of my home.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, Jordy, really appreciate it. Have a good show today, and hopefully we'll have a good dynamic matchup between the Tigers and the Hawks tomorrow in the PMAC.
Yeah, looking forward to it, fellas. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, Jordy.
BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the #1 spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile wagering to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE to get started. That's BLEAV. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.